Aloha guitar class. Today is lesson 7, and today we're going to talk about music literacy, which has to do with reading, being able to read and write music on paper. Okay, and also to be able to play it on your instrument, but to look at music on paper, to know more about what's going on there, to read, to analyze and diagram, and to finally, the ultimate goal is to be able to play it, right? So, um, we're going to have a lesson about that, and we're also going to go over our exam one study guide and try and get you ready to take exam one. Okay? So, first thing, let's take a look at our study guide and see what's going on there. Because uh, this is kind of a bigger part of your grade. The weekly assignments there's a lot of them, so, but they don't count for as much percent of your grade for each one. But exam one, it counts for 10% of your grade. And we're going to get you ready for that. We're going to tell you everything you need to know to, get every question right on that exam. And uh, we're also going to have an assignment that's going to also help you to get ready for the exam so that you can try some of the things, and I can let you know whether you're doing it right or you're not doing it right in an assignment before we do things for real on the exam. Okay? So, first, let's take a look at the study guide. So, exam one study guide. Um, First thing is we have to know these chords, all right? You're supposed to already know these. Well, some of them you don't, because we haven't done them yet in a lesson or a song, but by the time of the exam, we will have done them, okay? Because we have a few more weeks to go before our exam. But yeah, this is the list of chords. These are all on your chord chart right here. You can look them up and learn them, okay? So memorize those. Now, be able to match the chord symbol, such as G, E minor, C, these are chord symbols, to the chord diagram. So if you are shown, you know, let's see, if you are shown the diagram without being given the chord symbol, you can write, what is this? A minor, okay? So you write A with the little M, okay? Let's see, or you're shown this, and write the chord symbol. You have to write D7, okay? D7, okay? Or you're shown this one. This is one we haven't learned yet, but we will. We're going to learn a song called Amazing Grace, and this is going to be included in that, and we'll be able to do that before we take our exam. And what is this? It looks like C, but it has one more note here, and that makes it a C7. Okay, C7. So that's pretty simple. Um, you see the diagram, and you match the chord symbol to the diagram. Okay. Another thing that's a little bit harder is we're given a chord symbol. Okay, so let's write a chord symbol here. Why has it left that? Okay. Alright, let's try that again. G7. Alright. Now, this is one that you don't know yet, but you will, like I said, you will by the time of the exam. Okay, let's see, paintbrush. Sorry. Let's see. Let's make that a little bigger. Okay. All right. So G7, and you have to draw the diagram. All right. So there we go. I'm going to try to make it neat. All right. And then you have to write the fingering. All right. That wasn't so good. Control Z. Let's try that again. This is what's good about digital. Okay. All right. 2 and 1. All right. So that's a little bit messy, but I can see clearly. To be more specific, you can write the circles here for the open strings. Okay. That's good to have. That's an extra detail. It doesn't have to. Really, the main thing I'm looking at is that you get this part with the fingering correct. So these have to be in the correct place, and the fingering has to be correct in order to get credit for it. And then if we look at the chord chart and we look at G7, we'll see the same thing here with the little circles for open strings. All right, let's do another one. Okay. Let's do a D. Okay, we'll do D. All right. Actually, let me write this a little bit higher up. D, just to give myself some space here. So first, I gotta draw the D chord. Alrighty, 1, 2, 3. Not good. I should have drawn a bigger circle. Alright. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I can pretty much see it. It'd be nice if it was a little bit neater. You know, when you get your exam or your study guide assignment, you can print it out and write on the paper and then scan it or take a photo of it and then email it to me. That's a good way to do it. You can make things nice and neat. You can write in pencil so you can erase. Or if you do it digitally like this, it has to be pretty clear. I think, you know, if I looked at this, I would say, yeah, it's messy, but it's correct. I can tell that that's a 1 and that's a 2 and that's a 3. I would try to do it a bit neater if I was doing this as an exam. I'm not super good at drawing in Photoshop with the paintbrush, but you know, that's how it goes. Okay, there's an open string here. Okay, but this is very important. For D, you have to write which strings are X'd out. So it's X, X. Okay? And sorry, but if you don't have those X's in the right place, then it'll be wrong. Okay, so in addition to having to learn the chord and be able to draw the chord diagram, you have to know which strings are X'd out, which on D is 2 of them. All right, and that's detailed in your chord chart too. That's very important actually. Like when you play the chord, that's a very important thing to know, like which strings to strum and which ones not to strum. Okay, so D is X'd out, C is 1 string X'd out, and A minor is 1 string X'd out. The only chords where we strum all 6 strings are E chords and G chords so far. Okay, so A minor and C's, that will have an X on the E string. D chords will have an X on the E and the A string, and all of these chords you strum all 6 strings, so you don't need an X. And it's good if you can include those circles where the open strings are. That's very detailed. Circle or X for if it's open or if it's not played. That's nice to include. But the main thing is you have to get these circles and the numbers inside the circles correct and the X's correct, and then you can get full credit for that. The circles here I'm not going to be too strict about, okay? So there's that. All right, now let's take a look back at our study. Exam 1 study guide. Okay, so we've talked about this. You have to memorize the chord, have to write the chord symbol when shown the diagram, and you have to be able to draw the diagram with the correct fingering on a blank chord diagram, and also include where those X's are, okay? Number 2 we'll talk about at the end. That's probably the most complicated thing that we'll do. Be able to write the counting underneath the rhythm as demonstrated in this lesson, and be able to write the strum / picking direction symbols on top. Okay, and we'll talk about that towards the end. All right, let's talk about these simpler things first. The scales. Okay, so, you know, like when I see this, I have to recognize that and say, that's the F major scale, okay? Or this is the G major scale. So you're shown the tab for the scale, and you have to write the name of the scale. F major or G major or E blues, okay? But the harder thing is that you have to write the tab for the scale, okay? So go back and erase this. So let's see. All right. Here's what it says on your exam, and you're given this tab to write on. Wait, sorry. I need to open a different. This is a ukulele tab, and I need a guitar tab. Oops. Okay. There we go. Let's make the measures a little bigger here so we can see. Okay, so it could say E blues. All right, and then I have to write the tab like so. And we haven't learned this scale yet, but we will. By the time of the lesson, we will have learned it. All right. Actually, I'm gonna change this to 8th notes so I can fit more notes and measure. Okay, and then I have to write the scale out like this. All right, that's all I have to do. I don't need to. You won't need to write any notes or anything like this. Just the numbers. Okay, and that's all. So, unfortunately, you know, you won't get partial credit if you get most of the notes right and you get 1 or 2 of them wrong. If there's one of these notes missing, then it's wrong, unfortunately. You know, each item on the exam is like, this counts for like 1 point, right? And if you miss it, it's you don't get half a point or something. It's either right or it's wrong, so you have to be careful. Okay, and then if you look at the scale sheet, and then you'll see everything matches, and there we go. Correct. You get the point. So that's it for that part. Um, when you are shown just the tab, you have to write what the scale is: C major, E blues, F major, or G major. Or if you're shown just the name of the scale, you have to write out the tab for the scale. That's the part that's a little bit harder. Okay, but these things, chords and scales, ever since we started doing them, you've been told that it has to be memorized. You have to memorize them, and then this exam will test how well you've done that. And then, if you want to practice doing that, you can just go online and get like a blank tab or a blank chord diagram, and you can just practice writing the chord diagrams like I just showed you, or writing out the tab for the scale. Okay, and that would be a good prep for your exam. Okay, just so like when it comes time to do it, it's not like the first time that you've ever written out a chord diagram or drawn a tab. Okay, so that brings us to being able to identify notes on the treble clef. Okay, so we've learned how to read the tabs so far. Okay, and that's good, that's very useful. And we've learned what these rhythm symbols mean to some extent. But what we haven't learned is how to read what this note is and where it is on your guitar. And that's one thing that we're going to learn how to do today. Just kind of be given an introduction to that, and then in the next few lessons we'll start having some exercises, and parts of the lessons be about reading the notes on the treble clef. Okay, so let me show you how that works. It's pretty simple actually in theory. And let's see. Oh, I need to open it. Okay. Notes, how to read the treble clef. Okay, here we go. So the way I like to teach the class is the first thing is we want to like get you playing some songs and some chords and having fun and enjoying that, but also that's like an ongoing practice thing. You want to do that as early as possible so that you're playing some scales, you're playing some simple melodies, you're able to play some chords and strum chords and switch get to where you can actually make the chord switch in time with the recording. Maybe you still have to slow it down, but we want to get to that point, and that's a really good place to be. You're able to do some things musically, and now we're even doing like two-part harmony, which is even more interesting for the two-part harmony melodies that we're doing. But now's a good time to kind of look at some things more on paper and deepen our understanding a bit of what's going on with some of the other things like the notes and the rhythms, and being able to read these things, because one of the goals of the course is that you will eventually, after the course is over, be able to study music on your own and learn songs on your own. And if you can find a good music chart that you're able to learn the song, depending on how difficult it is. We're always limited by the difficulty level of the song, but at least some songs that are within your ability to play, that you could learn it by having the recording of the song and a music chart. And you should be able to do that after this course is over. And in order to do that, we have to know how to read some of the notes, or if there's tabs, we're reading the tabs. But basically, all the tab does is it shows you where this note is on your instrument. That's it. You have a note above, and then below it shows you um, where that note is on your instrument, right? So you have this note B, that's a B, and here it shows you the B string open. Now that makes sense because this is the B string, and when you play it open, that means you're playing the note B. Okay, so the tab is helping to show you where each note is on your instrument. Okay, but you don't actually need the tab to do that for you. You can actually just learn where those notes are on your instrument, and then you don't need the tab to show you. Now, tab comes in handy because it makes the music a bit more accessible and helps us to have something in the beginning that we can read, um, without having to learn all, like, how to read the music notation, which just takes a lot longer than to understand and how to read tab. Um, but it's a good thing to include in your daily practice, because it helps you to understand music better, and the more you can do that, the easier it is to learn these songs, right? The faster you can learn the songs quickly, easily. Oh, I want to learn this song, okay, and then 20 minutes later it's done, right? That's what we want. And understanding music and how it works can help you with that, uh, as well as just like teaching you something that you didn't know before, right? Increasing your knowledge in a certain subject area. So if you notice, this has this symbol here, and then over here it tells us what that means, and this is the treble clef. Okay, and it's kind of a fancy squiggly symbol, but basically what that does is it tells us what these lines and spaces represent, and depending on what the symbol is here, whether it's a treble clef or a bass clef or an alto clef, these lines and spaces could mean different things, okay, depending on what the symbol is here. The ukulele, the guitar, we read the treble clef, okay, and the transposition for guitar is up one octave, okay, and all that means is that when we play this note on the guitar, it's going to sound one octave lower than the note on the piano. And we just do that so that our notes can kind of fit all on this treble clef, and that we don't have to have another clef to read. We just move the notes up one octave and then they fit on the treble clef. That's all. Okay? So, here, the thing you have to realize that's different about this and the tabs is that these lines have nothing to do with your guitar strings. Nothing at all, because on the tab the lines represent strings, but here it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that at all. And also, we don't just use the lines, we also use the spaces. So a note can be placed on a line or a space. And the notes on the lines are E, G, B, D, F. Okay? And how do we know that? Well, the treble clef tells us that. And it's just a thing that you have to remember. And the sentence we usually use is every good boy does fine. I think that's what it says here. Every good boy does fine. Okay, now here in this particular book, they've gotten a little fancy and they say every guitarist begins doing fine. Well, that's all well and good. You can use that if you want. It's the same thing. Every good boy does fine is more common. That's the thing that most people learn, and it's a bit simpler, I think, than saying every guitarist begins doing fine. I'm not a big fan of that. So I use every good boy does fine. And then for the spaces, they spell the word face. F-A-C-E. Okay? Now, what does that mean and how does that help us is probably what you're wondering at this point. Um, so if we take a look at, let's look at something that has a wide range, like Bach, Bourrée, or something. Okay. All right. This is a good example of maybe like why we would want to learn how to read this. Okay, this is a chart. It doesn't have a tab, okay? But say, I'd like to play this maybe. Um, right? And, I can read this, so I can play it. Okay, so the Bach Bourrée. All right, and yeah, that's the thing is that not everything is tabbed. Sometimes it doesn't have tabs to go along with it. All right, this is good for our purposes right now. So remember, the lines are every good boy does fine, and the spaces are spell the word face. F-A-C-E. Okay, so what's this note? All right, well, it's on a line, so we use our sentence, every good boy does fine, and that's an F. Okay, and that's how that works. So what about this one? Okay, it's also on a line, and we do every good boy does, that's a D. All right, so that's what every good boy does fine and FACE do for us. It helps us identify what the name of the note is depending on what line or what space it's on. Okay, here's one. It's on a space. Okay, so every good boy does fine doesn't work for that. We have to use the word face, and we just spell the word face like this. F-A-C-E. So this is an E. Okay, this is an A because it's F-A. All right, as in the word face. This is a C because it's F-A-C. Okay, do you see how that works? Let's see, do we have any lower notes? What are the low notes? Yeah, they get a little bit lower here. What's this note? This is E because it's the first line in the word every good boy does fine. The sentence every good boy does fine. What's this one? This is a B, as in every good boy. Okay, so that's pretty simple to understand. All right, and then we have some other symbols here. Unfortunately, these are all sharps. Let's look at this one. Okay, now we have the symbols for flat and sharp. All right, and right, so this looks like a little B. In music, it's not a little B, it's flat. Okay, so this note is D flat, not DB, but D flat. All right. It's just like how we read this chord symbol, right? It's not EM, it's E minor. Okay, so it's little symbols like that that look like things that we know don't necessarily mean the same thing when we're using it with music, okay? So flat and sharp. What does flat and sharp mean? Well, sharp means that the pitch is raised, so the pitch goes up. So in relation to C, this note, C sharp, will be one pitch higher than the note C. Okay, and what does flat mean? It means that the pitch is lowered. So the D flat in relation to D will be one pitch lower than D flat. Okay, and I'll show you what this means on your instrument here in a minute. So the flat and the sharp. So if you write C here without the sharp sign on your exam, then it will be incorrect. Alright, because when we put the sharp sign on it, it's no longer C, it's C sharp. So here is C because F-A-C. Okay, and here you have to write C sharp because it's C but with the sharp sign next to it. And when you do that, you can just use the symbols for flat and sharp. You don't have to write the word sharp, S-H-A-R-P, or flat, F-L-A-T. You can just use the symbols for that instead. Okay. What's this note? It's F because F-A-C-E is what we remember for the spaces, and it's F sharp because it has the sharp sign next to it. What's this one? It's B because every good boy, but it's B flat. Okay, not just B, but B flat. Okay, so then that entails like everything that falls either on one of these lines or on one of these spaces. And that's all that you're going to be tested on the exam. Is you'll be shown a note, it'll be on a line or on a space, and you have to write the name of the note. Okay, whether it's B or A or D flat or C sharp or whatever. And all you have to remember for that is every good boy does fine for the lines, F-A-C-E for the spaces, and the sharp and flat signs. And that's it. But you'll notice, like if you look at this, you'll see some notes that kind of fall outside of that. And what do you do when you see that? Okay, well, we have to understand the notes a little bit differently now. Because if you just go, you see this is E, and then this is F, and this is G, and that's alphabetical, right? So if I just start here on this E, we know this is E because it's the first line, and the lines are every good boy does fine. So if we go from here and we just go line, space, it's alphabetical. It goes E, F, G, and then what comes after G in music is A again because the music alphabet only goes up to G. There's no H or I notes, so it's E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, like that. So what happens when we go above or below this? We just have to count alphabetically. So we have a note here that sits above the staff. Well, that's a G because the last note here is F. Every good boy does fine, and what comes after F is G. Okay, we have a one on a line. We call these ledger lines if we draw lines above or below the staff, and this is A because F, G, A. This is B because F, G, A, B, like that. Alright, so when you have them above or below, you just count alphabetically. Alright, below, let's see, here's one below. Now, below, what you have to do is you count backwards through the alphabet, okay? Because when you go this way, you're going forwards through the alphabet, and when you go this way, you're going backwards through the alphabet. So what's this note here? We know this line is E, and then the note underneath that on this space is D, and then this line is C, and then this note will be B. So E, D, C, B. So we're just counting backwards through the alphabet. All right, this is C because E, D, C. This is D because it's just the one underneath the E right here. Okay, so we can look at something that's got even higher notes. Like let's look at AC/DC here. Not that one. Let's look at this one. I know this is one that's got some really high notes and also some pretty low ones. All right. Sorry, the resolution is not good when you zoom in, but here we have our treble clef, E, G, B, D, F. Every good boy does fine. Okay, now we have a really low note down here. And how do we figure that out? Well, we just count backwards through the alphabet from E, D, C, B, A, G, because what comes before A in the music alphabet is G, okay? So again, E, D, C, B, A, G, and that's G down here, okay? What chord do you think that's going to be? Well, that's a G chord because it's got a G on the bottom and a G up on the top right here, okay? So so that just shows you what to do if you see a note that falls outside of those ledger lines. And then when we get to that part of the course where we're starting to learn those notes, we'll revisit that concept. But as far as the exam goes, you just have to know what's on these lines and spaces. Every good boy does fine. FACE for the spaces and the sharp and flat symbols. Okay, so that brings us to the last thing, which is writing and counting rhythms. Okay, so if you remember, you already have this document rhythm chart. That's an important one, and that shows you the symbol and the beat value, which is what you need to know in order to do this. All right. And oh, before we do that, yes, let's talk about one more thing. So we talked about how to read the treble clef and how to identify notes. But yeah, before we move on, let's talk about where those notes are on your instrument. Okay, so let's switch back to the camera here, and this is how this works. And this is pretty simple actually, because you learn 3 or 4 notes and then you practice reading them. Okay, so first thing is like tune your instrument. This is a thing we learned how to do during the first week of class. But then sometimes I see people's assignments and they're playing their instrument and it's not tuned well, okay? And I think sometimes people just think like it's gonna stay in tune. Oh, I tuned it yesterday, it's fine. No, you have to tune it every single time, right? Every single time you play it, pick it up. It has to be tuned because it doesn't just stay in tune. And especially like before you record assignments or take the lesson videos, because you want to be in tune with me and we're in tune together like that. Okay, so this is how this works. All right, they show you 3 notes. We have E. Okay, how do we know that's E? Because it's on a space, FACE, and that happens to be our E string open. And that makes sense because this is the E string, that's the note E, and that's what we do when we see that, okay? And then F is the first fret of the E string, and then G is the 3rd fret of the E string. Okay, so it shows you those 3 notes: E, F, G. And then they have you practice playing the notes. Okay, this is a little bit too easy, so let's go down here to number 4. All right, and let's play that. So this is E, this is F, and this is G. Okay, so you go nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. E, F, E, F, G, F, G, F, E, F, E, F, E. Okay, and this is a good way to practice it, is to say the name of the note as you play it. That's called say it and play it. E, F, G, because when we name something, we remember it easier. And that forms the connection of what you see on the treble clef, where it is on your guitar, and it has a name, E. Okay, it has a name, F, and so on. Okay, next one, E, E, and then we go to G, G. Okay, G is up on top of the staff. All right, remember we talked about that. E, every good boy does fine, and then anything above that we count alphabetically. So F, and then the next thing is G. All right, here is F. Next is E. Here's an F. Next is E, and then we got a G, and an F, and a G, and a F, and a E. Okay, now let's try to play this one, and let's set the metronome. Okay, now this is one of the best things about learning how to do this, because learning how to read the notes is because when we're reading these notes, we're looking more directly at the rhythms. Okay, and that's good, because when we're reading tabs, we're kind of looking up and down, and sometimes it can be hard to be reading the tabs and also the rhythms at the same time. But when you're reading the notes, just the notes, you're seeing the note, but also the rhythm like much more clearly. Okay, so we're gonna do this one, and I'm gonna let the metronome count it off, and then we're gonna try to play. So actually I have to scroll out because there's another half note in there. Okay, so number 6. 1 beat for quarter notes, 2 beats for half notes. Whole note gets 4 beats. Okay, and this is going to get us ready to do the next thing, which is the rhythms. Okay, ready?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so it's pretty simple, because all we have to do is learn those 3 notes, and that may seem like it's very repetitive, but that's the point. You want to do it a lot and just really ingrain it when you see that note and where it is on your guitar, and play it. Okay, and then we have notes on the 2nd string, okay, otherwise known as the B string, and we have B. How do we know that's B? Because every good boy does fine. That's B, a very conspicuous note right in the center of the treble clef. C as in F-A-C-E, that's the 1st fret of the B string. And then D, that's the 3rd fret of the B string. Okay, D as in every good boy does. Alright, Then let's go down to here and let's do number 12. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Don't worry, because in the next few lessons we'll be doing more and more of this, and we'll revisit this. This is just an introduction to how this works and how to get started doing this. All right. Down here it gets a little tricky because we have to remember not just the notes on the E string, but also the notes on the E string. Okay, so let's just do these first three measures. So B, C, D, okay, and then here is F, which is the first fret of the E string. And then we go back to D, C, B, and then we have G, F, and D. Okay, so if you have trouble with that, right, you just have to go back and look, okay, where's B? Here's B, here's C, and here's D. And, you know, where's the notes on the E string? Oh, here they are, E, F, G. But yeah, towards the end of that notes on the second string part, you have to start remembering like where they are on both strings. And so the more strings you add, the more notes you have to remember, and it gets more challenging but also more interesting. And once we get to know the notes better, we can start varying the rhythms more. But this book revisits the kinds of rhythms that we started with, which were quarter notes and half notes and whole notes, and it keeps it pretty simple for a while, which is good. That kind of, you do something, then you move on, but then you go back and you review it. So then there's a couple other ways of finding notes. All right, so one is the scale. All right, in particular the C major scale. All right, so the C major scale shows you where most of these notes are. Okay, we start with C and we go alphabetically. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So if we know that scale, then we can find notes just by cycling through the scale notes. All right. So let's see. What's this note? It's F. Okay. Every good boy does fine. Now say I forgot, like, F. I can do the scale, maybe not starting from down here, but we can go C, D, E, F, and here's F. Okay, now this is called notes on the second string, so we know that it's not C, D, E, F, it's not this F, okay, but it's the F an octave higher. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and there's our F. Okay, so we can use the scale to find notes. All right, and then also we have some other ways of finding notes. We have these fingerboard charts. This shows us where all the notes are. We know the open string notes are E, A, D, G, B, E, and then the notes on the 12th fret are also E, A, D, G, B, E. Alright, so that's one thing. Open strings, Eddie 8, Dynamite, Goodbye, Eddie. And then also on the 12th fret, the notes are the same, one octave higher. Eddie 8, Dynamite, Goodbye, Eddie. So if we start with E and then we go up to find the next highest E, that's called one octave. And that's the relationship between the open string and the 12th fret. And then this shows you where all the notes are. These are the natural notes, and then in between are the sharps and flats, like this. Okay? Now, I told you if when you sharp a note, that means the note moves one pitch higher, okay, but also that's one fret higher for us on the guitar. So if we have this note F and we sharp the F, it goes from the first fret to the second fret, okay? And then we have this note G on the third fret, and we can also flat that note. That moves the note one fret lower, and that's G flat. And then you'll notice whether we sharp F or we flat G, we wind up with the same note, which is this note, which we can call F sharp or G flat. And that's how the sharps and flats work. So fingerboard charts can be useful to kind of put things in perspective. I wouldn't try to rely on those too much when we're trying to do the music reading practice. Instead, I would try to memorize where those notes are, because like you've seen with the chord charts and the scale charts, we don't want to be too reliant on looking at those. We want to have those down from memory, okay? And then this shows you, for example, where all the C's are on your guitar, or where all the B's are, and so on. And if you're looking for a note in particular. All right. And then there's one other way to understand how the notes are laid out, right? You have the diagram, right? But how do you know that? Like if I didn't have my diagram, how could I find, like, for example, this note up here, right? How would I know that that note is a D? Or if I just picked any random note on my guitar, how would I be able to figure out what that note was, okay? Well, I'll show you. Here's one called the note wheel. Let's see if I can display it in this smaller window up here. And the note wheel is kind of useful in showing us just how the notes work. All right. And it's like this. It looks like a clock, because just like a clock, there's 12 things here, 12 notes. And they go around in a circle, right? Just like what we saw when we were looking at the treble clef. It's like when you get to G, and then the next thing is A again, and then B, and then C, and then we can go this way forwards through the alphabet, and we can also go this way backwards through the alphabet. Okay, and then in between most of the notes is a sharp and a flat note. Okay, except between E and F and B and C, there's no sharp or flat note. There is a note called B sharp, but it's the same note as C. And there is a note called C flat, but it's the same note as B. And vice versa with the E's and the F's. And it's a little bit hard to understand why you would want to have a note called F flat instead of a note called E. But there are times when you do want to have that. And it's hard to understand if you haven't learned something about the key signatures and music theory. But anyway, so if we start on E, here, let's do the high E string, all right? That's a good one. The book starts with the first string, or the high E string, and we start on E, okay? And then we can figure out what all the notes are on that string. We start E, and then the next fret is F, and then the next fret is F sharp, or G flat. The next fret is G, the next fret is G sharp, otherwise known as A flat, and then A, and we just keep moving up. A sharp, B flat, this is B, and then the next note here is C, and then C sharp or D flat, and then D, and then D sharp or E flat, and then when we get to the 12th fret, it's E again, all right? Because that makes sense, because like what I said at the beginning, E, open, and then 12th fret will also be E. And that's why, because there's only 12 notes. Okay, and you can do that with any of your strings. B, you start on B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. Okay, and that's how you can find any note on your guitar. After the 12th fret, the notes repeat again. So this is B, and then again C, C sharp, D, and so on. You can go all the way up to 20. Let's see, is that 20? 15, 17, 19, 20. Yeah, I have 20 notes. Okay, what's that last one? Well, let's see. E, F, G, A, B, C, C, C. Okay, so that's just a little introduction to the notes on your guitar versus the notes on the treble clef. And as you saw with the note learning method, you just learn a couple of the notes at a time and then practice reading them, and then it's a process that, like learning chords and scales, and eventually more and more and more, but you do it gradually. Okay, and it would be impossible to learn how to read music after just one lesson. Okay, but you can understand the concept of how it's going to work. All right, so last thing we need to talk about is rhythms. Okay, so you have this here on the study guide. It says that you have to be able to write the counting underneath a rhythm as demonstrated in this lesson, and be able to write the strum or picking direction symbols on the top. Okay, if we look at the guide to counting eighth notes, it shows us some examples of this. All right, and you've seen this on some of the study materials. I've written the counting out underneath a rhythm and some strum or picking direction symbols up above, and we've also talked about in other lessons like how to count these based on the rhythm chart and how to count and play them. Okay, so we're going to do a bit more with that. All right. So with quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, it's pretty simple, right? Quarter notes are one beat, so you have to play them on every single beat. All right. So when we're doing this,
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
okay, the half notes get 2 beats, and the whole notes get 4. This is a dotted half note, it gets 3, and then this quarter note comes on 4. So let's just play the chord G. Play your G chord, and we'll do this rhythm on the G chord, okay, with the metronome. 1, 2, 3,
4. 1,
down,
2,
down,
3,
down,
4.
down,
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so that shows us when we write the counting out underneath those rhythms, it shows us exactly where each one of those things falls on the beat with the metronome. And I'm using the speak beat metronome again, just like I showed you in previous lessons. All right, and why are they all down? Because they all come on a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And that's how the strumming or picking direction symbols work. It's very, very simple, which is that when it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's a down, and when it's an and, it's an up. So if we don't have any notes coming on the ands, then they're all down. And that's how that works. If they come on and, then it's up. So the hard part here is writing the counting out, but if you get that right, the strum direction symbols are very easy, just based on this very simple rule. Okay, now let's make that harder. Okay, so we have some dotted quarter notes and some eighth notes. Dotted quarter note is 1.5, so it's like a quarter note plus an eighth note. And then the eighth notes, which when they're together in groups, they get beamed together, and then when they're by themselves, they have a little flag. Those are half. And that's why we need and to count, because some of these don't fall on one of the beats, they fall on in between the beats on and. All right. So as we've seen, in songs like Ode to Joy, Amazing Grace, and Aloha Oi, this one is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if there was no dot, this note would fall on 2, but because there's a dot, it falls on the and of 2. All right. The and after 2, we call that the and of 2. The and after 3, we call that the and of 3. So some music terminology here: the and of 1, the and of 2, the and of 3, the and of 4. That's how we describe that. Okay. Now this one is the simplest one to understand because it's all eighth notes. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You play on every single beat, but also on the off beats. All right, which is what we call the ands, is called offbeat, on the beat and off the beat. Okay, this one's easy to understand because it's just a quarter note and eighth notes, and everything's coming on the beat. I mean, you're playing on all the beats is what I mean. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This one's a half note, so it gets everything up until 3. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you see how that works? Now let's play this line with the metronome. Okay, we'll just do the strumming on the chord G. Ready?
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2
Up,
and 3
down,
and 4
up,
and 1
down, up,
and 2
down, up,
and 3
down, up,
and 4
down,
and 1
down,
and 2
down, up,
and 3
down,
and 4
down, up,
and 1
down,
and 2 and 3
down, up,
and 4
down,
and.
up. Okay, so I want to take that last step because I just want to show you that the goal here is to be able to play the rhythm, right? So imagine you have a music chart. It's a song that you want to learn. This is like the coolest song ever. You must learn this, except there's some part that you can't understand, like the rhythm part. Um, you've tried to do your best by imitating based on the recording, but you just can't quite get it. All right. So, but this can help if you diagram the rhythm, write the strum or picking direction symbols above each one, and then play it slowly with the metronome and gradually speed it up. Okay, this is a system that works no matter how complicated the music gets. It can be incredibly complicated, but you can always diagram it, write the strum direction symbols, put the metronome on, and figure it out. Rhythms can always be measured very, very precisely. Okay? Now, what complicates that a little bit further is when we tie notes together. Okay, so these notes are tied over. Um, and that makes it harder to play, but it doesn't change anything about the counting and how to write the counting underneath the rhythm. It just changes how you play it. All right, so one thing is that you cannot put a strum or picking instruction symbol, direction symbol, on the note that is held over. Okay, so you can't put a down symbol here because this note is not played. It's just the note is played here and then it's just held over. You see? So a down or an up symbol means that you're playing something, and which is why you cannot put a symbol over this note or this note or this note, because the note that's tied over is not played. All right, so everything works basically the same as up here. We have some rhythms that should be pretty familiar now, right? So this is our Knocking on Heaven's Door rhythm, where we do like a fake strum here. So like down, fake, down, down, up. Okay, so some rhythms, after you've seen them a number of times, should become kind of like familiar. This is our Brown Eyed Girl strum pattern. Down, down, up, down, up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you'll notice nothing happened there on 3. It was just held over like that. Okay. So here, let's play this whole line on the chord G and see how it goes. All right, this is all you need in order to be able to do this, is the counting underneath and the strum direction symbol above. All right, we could also do it like on a single string. It's a little bit more boring, but let's do it on the G chord. Ready?
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1
Down,
and 2 and 3
down,
and 4
down, up,
1
down,
and 2
up,
and 3 and 4
down,
and 1
down,
and 2
down, up,
and 3
up, down, up,
and 1
down,
and 2
up,
and 3 and 4
down,
and 1.
Okay. So down here, it shows you something in 3/4. Okay, the thing about that is that you can't write a 4 here, so it only goes up to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if you write 4 over here, that's wrong. 3/4 only goes up to 3, 4/4 only goes up to 4. So no more, no less. So this measure line here, what that means is that the count restarts at 1. So every time you have one of these measure lines, the next thing is going to be 1 again. So don't do this. Don't write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nothing like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. And every time you have one of those measure lines, you have to restart the count at 1 again. And that's all that means, the measure line. It doesn't mean there's any space between these notes. It just means the count starts again. So if you see something in 3/4, it can only go up to 3 and no more. Here's our Knocking on Heaven's Door rhythm 2, and here's something that is just kind of random. All right, so let's play this. This increases the difficulty further when the note is tied across the measure line, because when you can't play that beat 1, that makes it harder. Let's play this last line, and then we'll diagram a rhythm, and that'll be it. Okay? On the G chord. Ready?
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3
Down,
and 4
up,
and 1
up,
and 2
down,
and 3
down,
and 4
down,
and
up,
1
down,
and 2
down, up,
and 3
up,
and 4
down,
and 1
up,
and 2
down, up,
and 3
down,
and 4
down,
and
up. Okay. We can speed that way up. Let's
1
see.
and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 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 and 2 and
That was hard, but I got it. It would have been embarrassing if I had missed one. But yes, you cannot write a strum direction symbol here, here, or here. can't write it on the note that's tied over. Okay, so if you have something like this on your exam and you get everything right except you put a strum direction symbol here, I'm sorry, but it's wrong. It's an X. You don't get the point. You have to get everything right on it in order to get the point. Okay, so some of them might be like a one measure example, others might be like a two measure example, and they'll be separated out. But you have to get the count and the strum direction symbols right in order to get full credit. There's no partial credit for getting most of it right. Okay, it's just either right or wrong. So let's diagram a rhythm. All right, so we'll go back to our Guitar Pro here, and let's write something out kind of randomly. Um, let's see, I'm just gonna do random stuff here. Um, I'll try to build some variation here. Okay. Okay, that's probably good enough. And then what we want to do here is now put this into Photoshop. So that we can write on it. All right. Example 3. Let's see if this works. Ah, yes, there it is. Okay. Okay, so this is like an example that you might see on your exam, except it's probably going to be, this one's going to be harder than what you'll see on the exam. The exam will be kind of like simple stuff. All right, so let's write the count first. All right, so starting with 1. Let's see, let's make our font a little smaller. Okay. And you know, when you have the exam, you can print it out and write on it, or you can try and write with some program. You can do digital stuff. Okay. And I'm just showing you kind of how, what the exam, and also, but like I said, you have a study guide assignment that you can do to practice this before you take the exam, so that's going to help. This is an eighth note, right? So the very next and is going to fall on the next note. This is a rhythm we haven't seen before, where there's a quarter note in between the two eighth notes, but that's, you know, that's a possibility also. And this is a quarter note, so it gets and 2, so it's twice as long as the eighth note, so it gets like 2 increments of count here. All right, and then when you do this, you have to make sure get the count directly under the note head, okay? Because if this is over here, then I don't understand. Yeah, I don't know that you understand that this is falling on and, right? So it has to go here in order for it to be correct. If it's over here, then it's incorrect. And if it's over here, it's like really incorrect. Okay, but if it's unclear, then it's wrong. It has the count has to be written directly under the note head where it's falling. Okay, this is, sorry, not 2 but 3. Okay, and all right, 4. And. Okay, so even though this is the last thing in the measure, we still have to write and, because everything has to, you have to write 8 things here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. Now, well, I'll show you this on the last measure. This is 1, okay, because we passed the measure line there. We have to restart the count. And 2 and 3, because this is a half note. It gets 2 full beats. All right, this is 3 and 4 and. So every time you see like 4/8 notes in a row, it's just going to be 1 per increment of counting. All right, so that's that for that part. And then the next line, we restart the count again. Okay, the tied notes don't affect the count. It's just affecting what you're gonna play. All right, 1 and 2 and, because that's a quarter note, I'm gonna move this over just to make sure it's directly underneath. Okay, that's one reason why you should not write the counting down here. It's better if you write it directly under the note head. Okay, 3 and 4 and. Remember, the dotted quarter note gets 3 increments of time counting here, and then that's it. 1 and 2 and 3 and. It's really easy when it's just 8th notes, and then this is 4. Okay, let me back that up though. I don't necessarily have to write everything from left to right. Okay, what I can do is I can write it from right to left too. Okay, so I know this is the last quarter note in the measure, so it has to be 4. Okay, and then this is the and before 4. Uh-oh. Alright. It's a little harder after. This is 3. So I can work my way backwards. There's no reason why I have to go from left to right. And this is 2 and 1. Okay. Now, why would anyone want to do this? Okay, just respacing stuff here. Alright. Say that there was a rhythm that you didn't know. Like, let's go back to this previous measure. Alright, and we'll see like how this sort of backwards thinking can help you. Especially if, you know, there's one that you don't know. I really don't want to look at my rhythm chart, but there's a way I can figure this out. Okay, say, you know, imagine I forgot what this rhythm symbol is supposed to mean, how many beats to give it. I can figure this out by the process of elimination. Alright, so this is the last 8th note in the measure, so I know that this is and. Okay, so now I can go back. I know this is 1 and. I keep hitting the wrong button there. And 2. Alright, let's get my and back on here. This This is also and. Okay. Alright. So we've done all the stuff that we know. It's doing weird things, but that's okay. And then we've left the thing that we don't know. Alright. So we know that this is 3. And then we also know this comes on and, so with all that information we can fill in the rest, right? So we know this has to be 3 and 4, and that this is coming on and. Alright, so we just do what we know and then fill in the rest of the count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, because we know every measure has to have all of those in there. Alright, and then the last thing is the easiest thing, which is the picking or strumming direction symbols. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste these. Alright, over from the other thing here. I'm going to do the downs first, just because of the way this Photoshop thing works. Can I make that bigger? Jeez. It's hard to make it bigger. Okay, so as we saw with Guide to Counting Eighth Notes, if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's down, and if it's on and, it's up. That makes things really simple. Really simple, okay? So, sorry my symbols are kind of small, but that's okay. So I put this wherever there's a note that's being played on a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay. Whoa. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. That's what I want to do. 3, 4. Well, I can't put 1 here because it's tied. Alright, so you'll notice I'm skipping all the notes that are held over, because like I said, if you do that, it'll be wrong. Okay, and there's a reason why I'm saying this a bunch of times, because like every semester, every people always do that. They put it down here, and what that means is that you don't understand how music works. And the exam is kind of a test of that. Do you understand it or not? And how well did you pay attention to this video? Alright, I think that's all the downs, and then we'll do the ups. Okay, and I'm only doing it this way because of just how this copying and pasting thing from Photoshop works. Alright, so we'll do ups now, and we'll put it everywhere there's an and. So there's a note that's falling on an and. Here's one. Okay, here's one. Here's an oh no, it did that to me again. Alright, and it's doing things I didn't ask for it to do. Okay. And here's another and. Here's an and all right. Let me go back, fill in the count here. Two and 3 and 4 and okay. So this is fairly complete now. So this is a down because it's on 1. This is an up because it's on and. This is an up because it's on and. Up because it's on and. Down because it's on 4. Down because it's on 1. Down because it's on 3. Up on and. Down on 4. Up on and. Up on and. Down on 2. Down on 3. Up on and. Up on and. Down on 2. Up on and. Up on and down on 4. Okay? And I cannot write any of those symbols here, 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 or here because those notes are tied over and we don't play them. All right? So let's play this on G with Speak Beat, and that'll do it for today. Okay?
1 and 2 and 3
G,
and 4 and 1
down,
and
up,
2
up,
3
up, down,
and 1
down,
and 2 and 3
down,
and
up, down, up,
1
up,
2
down,
and 3
down,
and 4
up,
1
up,
2
down, up,
3
up, down.
and
Okay. So that's how you diagram the rhythms. And I just hope that, today's lesson will help to kind of deepen your understanding of the music, how it's read, how it's written, how to diagram rhythms, which is a really, really useful thing to be able to do because not only is it complicated to figure out where each of those notes falls on the beat and then play it with the metronome, if you don't have the system for like which ones are downs and ups, that becomes very confusing and very awkward. But this gives us a system to deal with that. Rhythm is always something that can be measured and played very, very precisely. It's not guesswork. And in any case, in the beginning stages of learning music, I often tell the students it's not a guessing game, it's a matching game. So you learn where the note is and you match, what you see the note on the paper to where it is on your instrument. The chord symbol G, you look at your chord chart, okay, here's G. All right, so you're matching these things. The study materials tell you everything you need to know, and then it gives you something that you can work with later on to first, be able to learn the songs that you want to learn on your own without help, okay? But also eventually, to be able to do something more creative, to maybe write your own music or do improvisation or something like that. Um, and in order to do that, you have to know all these things: the scales, the notes, the rhythms, and learn how to put those things together. Okay, so hopefully that gets you ready for your exam, but yes, more importantly, deepens your understanding of music. Okay, and that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next lesson video. Mahalo.